welcome to tonight's program. I'm Paula Schneider and this is Romeo and Juliet, your favorite talk show about the lives of Verona's elite. With me today, I have Capulet.
I'm the man of the house and my word is law.
Lady Capulet.
I'm Lady Capulet and my husband's too hot.
Romeo.
I'm just in it for the money.
Juliet herself.
My parents don't control my life.
So this past week in Verona, a lot has gone down. Basically, Juliet married Romeo after knowing him for 24 hours. But after their one-night honeymoon, he had to flee to Mantua because he popped a cap in Juliet's cousin. Now Juliet is distraught because her parents are trying to marry her off to a random rich stranger. So now she must decide whether or not she should fake her own death in order to escape her controlling family and be with her husband of 3 hours for the rest of her life. So Capulet, I've heard that you put a lot of time and effort into the marriage between Paris and Juliet, and then she declined. I also heard that you got very angry and you threatened to never talk to her again. Lady Capulet and your nurse both stepped in and told you to calm down, but you didn't. What I'm wondering is, what made you become so hostile towards Juliet when she declined the marriage with Paris?
I've kept my daughter in her house her entire life. I've paid for her clothes, her food, and made sure she's had everything she needed. When I found a man that seemed to be a perfect suitor and she declined, I became quite enraged, saying, "How? Will she none? Doth she not give us thanks?" Her declination made me feel like she was being unappreciative of all the work I had put into making her a fit bride.
But how could you throw your 14-year-old daughter on the street?
Okay, when I said, "I'll give you to my friend and you be not, hanged, beg, starve, die in the streets," I do agree I may have been somewhat rash, and for that I apologize. Please, before you judge me, put yourself in my shoes. I've given my daughter everything she's ever needed. I searched for some time for a man with whom I was comfortable with giving my daughter to. Also, think of the time. Women need to be married as young as possible so they can find a husband.
So how are you feeling? I know that your attempt to have a joyous occasion to brighten up the death of a relative didn't work out, and that must make you pretty unhappy. Do you think Juliet's too young to be married?
No, because when I was 14, I was already a mother and a wife. Juliet is not at all too young. It's the perfect time to be married. And if my Juliet waits any longer, she is at risk of becoming a maid. My husband was fretting about her being too young to marry, but now he has come to the realization that 14 is a perfect age, and he agrees with me. He thinks Paris is a perfect fit for Juliet, and I agree with him.
I'm glad you both agree. But obviously Juliet doesn't. That brings me to my next question. Would you have supported your husband's decision of throwing Juliet out on the streets and never talking to her again if she doesn't marry Paris? If not, what would you have done?
Well, I would not have supported it, but I'm not sure if I would have done anything about it. I believe my husband was being too hot, but he put a lot of time into that arrangement, and for Juliet to just say no, that was a disgrace.
Romeo, you have killed Juliet's dear cousin Tybalt, and you've been exiled from your homeland, and you must obey your punishment. Are you regretful of your actions, given the fact that you may never see your loved Juliet again?
I have thought much about the crime that I have committed, and I have no remorse for my actions. I truly believe that I will see my wife in the future, for our love is strong, and I cannot even think of a day without her. I stand by what I said about reuniting with Juliet, saying, "I doubt it not, and all these woes shall serve." I believe that the two of us were destined to be lovers, and not even a feud in an exile can change our feelings for one another.
But Juliet is supposed to marry Paris soon. Her parents are fond of him and are angry at her for disobeying them. She must make a decision between you or him. What are your thoughts on this?
I have no doubt in my mind that Juliet will choose me. We are nothing without each other, and nothing can dim the shine of our love. I profess how deep my love is for her by saying, "I will admit no opportunity that may convey my greetings, love, to thee." I am deeply distraught that I cannot be with her when I am banished, and I know the feelings are mutual. She must be strong in confronting her parents.
Even if you hadn't committed murder and been sentenced to exile, how would you have dealt with the Capulets and the feud between the two families?
I have heard that Capulet does not speak highly of me, but I am willing to change who I am to be with Juliet, for she is the light of my day, and I am willing to try to gain his acceptance. I believe that the feud between our families is petty and stupid, for it has caused 2 deaths, and we are still angry with each other. I believe that the others see how strong the bond is between my soulmate and I. If they see this, they might be slightly less hostile and slightly more forgiving.
Juliet, you seem very unhappy for Romeo to leave you, telling him that he needest not be gone, even though you are aware of the dangers. Are you frightened for Romeo's safety as he leaves Verona to travel to his exiled Mantua? Do you think a sympathizer of Tybalt might try to hurt him on his way?
I am frightened for Romeo's life, as I always am when he is not by my side, but unfortunately it is out of my hands. However, it gave me some comfort to know that the friends and family of Tybalt must have been too busy mourning his death on that day to think of any retaliation. However, my reluctance was not just in fear for Romeo's safety, but in part because it is just so hard to say goodbye to my new husband. As I mentioned later on to my mother, I will never be satisfied with Romeo until I behold him.
You eventually decide to fake your own death and leave behind everything behind for Romeo. Would you really rather have had your entire family think you were dead and live without seeing them for the rest of your life than just marry Paris despite loving Romeo?
Indeed, this is the hardest decision I have ever had to make. After even my own nurse, who is like a mother to me, told me it seemed a better idea to marry Paris, I had to really ask myself if it was more sin to wish me thus forsworn or to dispraise my Lord with that same tongue. I love my parents and I love my family, I will be terribly upset to have to leave them behind, but that is a sacrifice that I will have to make in order to be with Romeo, who I love more than anything else on this earth. Marrying Paris and forgetting Romeo is not an option, and I will stop at nothing to be reunited with my love.
I'm Paula Schneider, and this has been Romeo and Juliet. Thanks for watching. Join us next week for Macbeth.